Alright everyone, I use a site called Makersupport to fundraise, to crowdfund, and I make a considerable sum doing that. Now, I am not on the far right. In fact, I'm not even a conservative. I'm a libertarian. I think some people would think that I was left-leaning in many social aspects. But Think Progress came out yesterday and did a hit piece, on the equinox, no less, as first day of spring. So we're going to celebrate by writing an ill-fated article, which has several ironic contradictions within it. We're going to get into that because it's really funny, actually. Think Progress decided to cast Makersupport off as like a repository of Nazis, saying, well, they're not banning people for having, opinions that we happen to dislike, like they're hate-filled people. Let me ask you this, why should a crowdfunding site ban anyone who's not engaged in criminal behavior? If the money is being used for criminal ventures, then absolutely. Absolutely they should be banned. But this is like, Lauren Southern was mentioned. Lauren Southern broke no law, is not in prison. Why should she be kicked off of Patreon? That was my thing. And the head there said, well, it's manifest observable behavior. Basically, we have a video of her doing something we don't like that could kind of cause danger, and therefore, it's a problem for us on this platform. But it's not criminal. No actual crime was committed. She was never brought up on any charges that I know of. So it didn't make sense at the time. Makersupport and sites like that, yes, they did spring up partially because creators looked around. Creators that engage in political speech. It doesn't have to be right-wing, by the way. B.H.A. Goodman talking about how he wishes Bernie Sanders had been the nominee and how he'd be the president, and that would be great right now. It could be, too far to the left for some of these people. Think Progress unknowingly acknowledges this in the same article. Again, I'll get into it. We creators looked at what Patreon did, and we looked at what was being done by other big tech firms, by Facebook, by Twitter, by YouTube, and we said, even if we aren't extreme, even if we aren't fanatics or doing anything wrong, we may be kicked off randomly from any of these platforms at any given time because some NGO decides they don't like us, because some advertiser decides to profile us, because some legacy media corporate outlet, a for-profit multi-billion-dollar corporation is tired of competing with us, does a hit piece and pressures YouTube or Facebook or someone to kick us off their platform and label us dangerous. That's ultimately what this is about. By the way, my prediction came true. They are actually coming for Amazon and other publishing firms. They're trying to get wrong-think literature kicked off of various publishing platforms now as well. I'm very thankful that my literature is largely about religion. I'm, at this point, that more than half of my income really comes from the occult side of my work. That's, as far as I know, not offensive or being targeted. In fact, they said, well, occultists are a religious minority, so you're evil and a despicable bigot if you're trying to deplatform my literature or something. So it's a safeguard for me. I'm glad I got into that. But Think Progress is totally wrong. There are several funny things in the article, so now I'm going to go through them. Number one is there's actually a banner at the bottom. The archived link in the description, of course. There's a banner at the bottom that alludes to the fact that because Think Progress talks about like bigotry and racists and stuff, that Google and these sites actually throttle their ad availability. Like when they put out a video or something like that, it's not going to be fully monetized, in other words. They have problems raising money because of the sensitive nature of what they spoke about. Now, I could have told Think Progress that would be a problem with exactly the kind of censorship they and others like them push. In fact, I did tell them many, many moons ago. I pointed out, hey, the biggest problem with trying to crack down on merely offensive content, whether it's monetization related, limited state, etc., is that people who are refuting or arguing against or mocking or merely referencing that content are going to get swept up by the algorithms. It's going to be a logistic nightmare. You're going to need a lot more staff at YouTube. Lo and behold, several months later, what do? Hire 10,000 more people who unfortunately then proceed to make numerous mistakes and alienate half of the platform, including people who totally broke absolutely no rule, and even YouTube had to apologize about the event. But Think Progress. It's very ironic that an article that is attempting to insinuate that Makersupport should be censored is itself, referencing the fact that Think Progress for wrong-think, offensive content, if sensitive content is being censored. How ironic can you possibly get? The other problem is this. It alludes to a Wired article. Now, Wired is also very far to the left, in the tech sense. And they're totally wrong in what they say. The Wired claims that alt-tech is basically the technological arm of the alt-right. I guess that they looked at the term alt-tech, and they look at the term alt-right, and they assume that the two things are overlapping, that there's a similarity between them. Alt-tech was a term in use before alt-right was in use. Alt-tech was already being used, has nothing to do, literally all it means is that the site is an alternative to a big, a hegemonic or monopolistic existent big tech firm, like BitChute would be alt-tech. It's alternative tech because it's competing with YouTube, an older, much larger, established big tech firm owned by Google. There's some site that competes with Amazon or some small platform, some small developing studio, a small gaming studio could be alt-tech. Anything like that is alt-tech, if it's new. And then increasingly alt-tech has also come to mean decentralized, like it uses blockchain, cryptocurrency, less censorship or even no censorship. I fail to see how that's a bad thing. I think there's nothing more American than the concept of building a technological realm in which governments are powerless to censor material. I think that's a great idea. Insofar as these sites are actually pretty capable of doing that, I think that's a great thing. I think that somebody needs to start pooling money to buy domain registrars in order to have that under the thumb of maybe free speech tech as well. I think that there needs to be a dedicated free speech domain registrar service so we can go a layer deeper in protecting people's material. And then all these sites can, of course, use something that's like Cloudflare. Cloudflare stops defending sites, they immediately get run offline. That's not really acceptable. It shouldn't be happening. People should have the right to their opinion, including they should have a right to raise money from other people. Look, they're still going to get money from their fans. They'll get it by a letter. They'll say, hey, you can send me $10 if you like my work or whatever. You're not going to be able to stop them from doing that. You can't stop a person from buying a pen and paper and writing up billets and posting them around their town. You can't stop them from getting money or checks or whatever in the mail. You can't stop them from having a bank account if they're not involved in any criminal behavior. What's the point? All you've done is do out of sight, out of mind. You've created an echo chamber. You've also alienated a lot of people. People who have even mild overlap with the alt-right on one or two issues at this point are called Nazis. You've got to understand that that causes them to become more prone to extremism, actual extremism. Creates an echo chamber. It prevents people like me from actually debating them. It makes it harder. When I debate Richard Spencer and get called a Nazi sympathizer because I don't just say, well, fuck you, Richard, you're such a horrible person, and I actually hold a debate which isn't devolving into a shouting match, it's a disincentive for somebody like me to even bother. It's too much fucking trouble at that point. But Think Progress is totally wrong. Look, the Wired article that you're citing is totally wrong. This shouldn't surprise you. I believe it was Wired as well that had an article some time ago, I think it was them or BuzzFeed, on Gab, and they said, oh, Gab is basically like Facebook. No, it's not. It's more like Twitter. Gab is like Twitter. How the hell is it like Facebook? It has nothing in common with it. It's basically a free speech variant of Twitter. Meanwhile, the only other time they want to talk about him is when the people who run Gab get into a tizzy or a little bit of a spat with one of their users for, I don't know the story behind it. It was a bunch of bullshit drama. It never should have happened publicly, by the way. It is dumb, but alt-tech has nothing to do with alt-right. You could have a progressive alt-tech platform. Hillary Clinton almost tried to start one. You remember when Hillary Clinton loses? She had that site where they were going to have like meme quotes with pictures and stuff, and you could submit them and they'd be like posted there, and then you could like download them and use them in debates because you're too lazy to type. And the site, I don't even know if it still exists. Like I predicted, nobody uses it or cares because it's centralized. It's exactly the opposite of where the net should be heading, which is towards less centrality. But it's basically alt-tech. Absolutely. It's to compete with, basically to compete with image boards that are less centralized, in which memes can be pumped out all day. That's basically what it boils down to. By the way, do you find it odd at all that groups like Think Progress, they never talk about, oh, 4chan this or 4chan that or Reddit or any of these other sites? You know, sites that are actually, they're explicitly free speech related and have very rabid, large user bases. They get really, really pissed off if you mention censorship. Nobody wants to tangle with them. They'd rather go after Makersupport, which as far as I know is like one dude in a dorm room running a server. And by the way, it works great. It even has one-time donations. By the way, I would much prefer you support beyond Makersupport. Specifically, I want him to take a cut of that money and be able to defend himself from stuff like this, but I've already given him my advice on how he should defend himself, which is namely, let people like me handle it. At this point, these alt-tech firms need to stop going up to bat for themselves because it's not good. It gets them boxed into a corner where what happens is that it becomes a public spectacle. And because the groups attacking them will inevitably cast themselves as we're on the left or we're part of the mainstream, this is a den of extremists. other people, because it's become a public spectacle that actually are extreme, will show up. And then they'll say, aha, here's your proof. Here's a bunch of alt-righters rising to the defense of Minds or Gab or BitChute or something. And it makes it easier for them to raid them and attack them. Now, the real reason is they compete with these sites. It's just like the corporate media. Think Progress trying to attack alt-tech is pretty funny. When you consider the fact that they label themselves progressive and yet they're siding with multi-billion-dollar big tech and legacy media firms. Legacy media attacks people on YouTube and elsewhere all the time to try to grind us down. They've been doing it at an accelerated rate. We got to talk about the gun content YouTube ban now too later. They've been doing it because they can't compete with us elsewise. We're destroying them. We're taking away their audience. Our audience is younger. We're beginning to make more money. We're far more efficient, and it becomes a concern for CNN or Fox. You know, Fox the other day, one of their contributors was like, "Oh, Fox has devolved into bullshit, and I'm just leaving. You know, screw this. It's propaganda." Of course it is. I've told you that for decades. I don't have to be on the left to realize that. The blindness happens when people cheer that dude on and say, oh yeah, Fox is propaganda, and they don't even realize so is CNN, so is MSNBC. They're literally all the same. There's no difference between these groups. They're all a bunch of bullshit. Everything you hear on there practically is bullshit. Meanwhile, if you point that out, you get a Rational Wiki article if you get a big enough audience, and they'll say it's a conspiracy theory. They'll try to take it literally, like you're not using a little bit of hyperbole to illustrate what you mean. It's rather funny. But trust me, to these firms, like, you know, to Minds, to Gab, all these others, certainly Makersupport, BitChute, Steam, and so forth, let larger creators that are joining with you go to bat for you. Because many of us know what it's like to be smeared. We've already experimented with how we should respond to it. It becomes formulaic at a point, because there are certain arguments you can make that really defang the attack. The problem is that if you do what they want you to do is get hot under the collar and immediately issue a public press release decrying their propaganda or something, so they can say, aha, look, they're angry. Look, we need to wheedle at them some more. Now other sites will see that and they'll attack you too. It multiplies your misery. Whereas if someone else is defending you directly and you're not saying anything, they can't really do that because it's not coming. It's not an official response from you. But you can coordinate with those creators now, can't you? It's a wonderful thing. We can actually have one another's backs. And like I've said before, I don't care what someone's political affiliation is. I know nothing about the political affiliation of Makersupport's founder. I don't know, and I really don't care. I don't care if he's a communist. He's just running a crowdfunding platform. It's not a political platform at all. It's just, hey, people create something, can make money here. If you're not doing something criminal, I don't care. It's as simple as that. It's called free speech. It's a good thing. That's about all. Peace out.